So let's talk about the new Mission Impossible movie that just came out. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. See, at least here they tell you this is just the first part. They didn't pull one of these things like that Hobbit movie where most people who were just casual film goers didn't realize that there was not going to be an ending to the film. There is no ending to this film, really. It is Dead Reckoning Part 1. So I enjoy the Mission Impossible movies. The Mission Impossible movies, I was just talking with friends about this, are like most of these major franchises to me, they're like bubblegum. You pop it in your mouth, not a movie, but the bubble gum. I don't know if this is really going to work. You pop it in, and while the flavor is there, the film-going experience to see these parallels, well, that's there. It's a lot of fun, and then once it's over, you kind of discard it and don't really think about it again. That's how I feel about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the Harry Potter movies, and these Mission Impossible movies. I've seen all of them in the theater. I enjoy them while I'm watching them, but I don't really think about them again after that. So this Mission Impossible picks up with some threads from the previous film. Some of the characters carry over. There's some references to the previous films. But if you're nervous about any of that, just be aware that Hollywood does not make any movie, does not make 99% of films for the audience not to understand. So anything that you think you might not get, it will be explained to you. The first 10 or 15 minutes of this movie had a preponderance of what Austin Powers so wonderfully personified as Basil Expositions. There's a whole lot of people talking to people about what the Impossible Missions Force is and who Ethan Hunt is, and a whole lot of, now let me get this straight. So that's all there up front. The basic story, I don't like to get into the plot. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. The basic story here is someone from Ethan Hunt's past, someone who he's not a fan of, returns into our storyline, doing some nefarious dealings, and the MacGuffin here is a key. There's this little key, and there's two parts to the key that might be dirty. There's two parts to the key, and this key unlocks something that will prevent AI from taking over the world and wreaking havoc and things like that. So the villain in this movie really kind of sort of is the internet. Now, every time a film has used modern of-the-moment technology as a major plot device, it like stamps the date on it. The net, for example, and becomes kind of laughable down the road. So I was I didn't really care for this movie. It was fine. Everybody in it is fine, but I'm cutting to the chase here. Unlike the film, which is really long, I found it kind of blah. I didn't find it very engaging. I found it very silly at times. Some of the action sequences lapse into being comedic, which I don't remember these movies really doing that much before. And some of them weren't shot that great, which is weird because, again, I've seen all of these in the theater, and I really thought the last several Mission Impossibles, like the last 3 or 4, were really good. That made me just excited for what the next one was going to be. And this one had a really interesting theatrical trailer, featurette, really, that I saw a few months ago that was all about this one scene in the movie. And I'm not going to give it away, but there's this one big stunt that Tom Cruise does in the movie that's very impressive. And they sort of show you all the preparation and lead up to that stunt, and then the stunt itself in the featurette trailer. Even when that's in the movie itself, it wasn't as impressive as I thought it would be. Something about this movie, it lacks the sizzle and the pop and the dynamism. Now, again, as I say, the cast is really good. You've got Tom Cruise, you've got Ving Rhames, you've got Simon Pegg, you've got Hayley Atwell, you've got Rebecca Ferguson, you've got Esai Morales, who's great to see again and really good, and probably more people that I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on her name. She's the alien woman in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. She's a mostly mute villain who's really good. She feels like she's plucked right out of a Bond movie. But overall, it lacked something for me. I would never say I was bored with this film, but I was not as engaged as I thought it would be. It seemed very overlong, kind of sluggish, kind of blah. Some of the action sequences were just ridiculous. There's a sequence with a train that just kind of goes on, and it's just like, I was talking about this when I was talking about the new Indiana Jones movie recently. I miss the old days of action and stunts where it was just real people and real cars and real things in the real world and real gravity, and not just amped up to such a ridiculous degree where something's coming at somebody and they lean back and it goes right past their face. I'm just like, come on, it's just stupid. And this movie had a lot of that, and I'm sure the other ones did too, but this movie had a lot of that. And I'm still looking forward to seeing the next one, but this one was, to me, a big step down or back from the last several Mission Impossibles on many levels. One, that the plot was just, it felt a little silly to me, like this self-aware AI was the enemy, and that that just seemed silly. And I'm not saying, I mean, it was kind of cool when they started to talk about AI at first, because like, this is something that's in the news now. This is something everybody's talking about and a little fearful of. But for some reason in the movie, it just seemed kind of a little cheesy. And some of the performances I thought were a little cheesy. And it was just a lot. Like, again, with superhero movies, of which this almost kind of is, I feel like smaller stakes, smaller scale is okay. It doesn't have to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. It could be an hour and a half. There were decades of fantastic movies that were 2 hours or less in our lives, and everything now just seems to feel like it has to be that epic. Again, it was entertaining while I watched it. I think I'm in the minority here. Most people I've heard say they thought this film was phenomenal. I thought Cruise just felt kind of tired in this movie, and I have no beef with Tom Cruise. I think he picks generally very good films to make. The fact that he is into doing his own stunts is really cool, and that he really seems to care about the films that he makes, and that they are made well and do well, and the safety of his fellow cast and crew is really commendable. But in this one, he just felt a little tired, a little dour, and this one didn't sparkle for me. What can I say? So I saw this in an IMAX theater, and I thought for some reason this film, or parts of it, sometimes they only shoot parts of a film in IMAX, and the way you can tell, IMAX screen is really more squarish than it is wide, like what we have here. And occasionally you'll be watching a film, I know The Dark Knight did this and some others, where it'll cut to the scenes that were shot in IMAX, and suddenly it'll go from this to this. And seeing that featurette, I believe, at an IMAX screen about the big stunt that I think was shot and presented in IMAX made me think this movie would be. It's not. It's just full widescreen. So not that there's anything wrong with that. It doesn't take away from the movie at all. But if you were going to see this at an IMAX theater thinking it was shot for IMAX, it's not. I go to see things at IMAX because it's big. I want to see things on the biggest screen I possibly can. And again, having this AMC A-list thing, I don't pay any more for that. So I'm going to try to see everything in Dolby or IMAX that I can if it works for my lifestyle. So it's not at IMAX, but it's still, for the most part, well made. Some of the action sequences, though, as I said, shot a little closer. It wasn't the shaky garbage that I hate, but shot a little tighter than I thought it should have been to convey what was going on. And certain things that, like in my brain, I'm like, okay, I know what just was supposed to have happened there, but it would have been way cooler to see it not from the inside of the car, or to see it a little farther back, or something like that. So I don't know if it was a COVID thing, if the film was rushed. I have no idea what the excuses are. I just thought it wasn't as dynamic as I expected a Mission Impossible movie to be. So hopefully part 2, hopefully Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 will right the ship. I don't know if that's intended to be the last Mission Impossible movie or what, but I'm very curious. I will eagerly go and see that on opening day, as I have the last several of these. This one, just to me, was kind of a disappointment. It didn't thrill me like I thought it would. So in theaters now, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.